Welcome to Conversations in the Humanities. It's a series of public programs sponsored by the Ohio State University Humanities Institute and this evening co-sponsored by the Jewish Community Center of Greater Columbus. I'm Fred Anderle. I'm an associate at the Humanities Institute, and this evening, A Life in Broadcast Journalism, a conversation with Ohio Public Broadcasting State House News Bureau reporter Bill Cohen. You hear Bill's familiar voice and news reports here in Columbus on WOSU and WCBE. 34 public radio stations around the state. He's often featured, as you know, on National Public Radio. Bill's been covering Ohio government issues for nearly 40 years. He's reported on hundreds of different public policy issues, from tax hikes and budget crunches and soaring college tuition to capital punishment, social issues like abortion and gay marriage. He has covered high-profile developments like the 1993 Lucasville prison riot, the long-running battle over Ohio school funding, dozens of elections for governor and president, the rise and fall of political legends like Governor James Rhodes and House Speaker Vern Rife, if you remember him. Bill is the recipient of numerous awards for his news reporting. I want to tell you, just in 2012 alone, just this year, Best Continuing Coverage and Best Governmental Reporting from the Ohio Society of Professional Journalists, Best Ongoing Coverage, Best In-Depth Coverage, and Best Public Service Reporting, 3 separate awards from the Press Club of Cleveland. So this evening we'll look back at Bill Cohen's, yes, round of applause, that's terrific. Absolutely. So this evening we'll look back at Bill's near 40-year career covering state government, and we'll get the inside story on how public broadcasting reports on our government here in the state. Welcome, Bill Cohen, great to have you here.
Thank you.
And we'll talk, Bill and I will talk for a while, then we'll open up to questions. And we'll have the microphone. Please come to the microphone so the people at home can hear you. We're streaming live on the internet through the Ohio channel, and we're being recorded, and it'll be played back on cable channels for around the state. So if you come to the mic, they will hear your question. So, Bill, we say reporter. So what does a reporter do? What's a typical day? You've often said to me, it's not glamorous, it's mundane. But what do you do? Where do you find the stories? How do you find the sources? You get there in the morning, and what happens?
Well, we're covering state government and politics. So, this is not like traffic accidents and murders and so forth. A lot of things are planned. So Joe Ingles and Karen Kassler and myself, we get in the morning, and so we have some idea of what's brewing. We do know that, I'm just making this up, the House Health Committee is holding a hearing on a bill to ban abortions after you can hear a fetal heartbeat. And so Joe Ingles has been covering that recently. She says, well, I'm going to that hearing. They're going to have some really emotional testimony, and we'll cover both sides of it. We'll get, even if maybe only one side is testifying that day, Joe will wind up seeking out somebody on the other side, so we have a good give and take in our story. We might look at the House and Senate floor schedule and say, oh, they're going to take up a bill to lower the state income tax again. We already have some idea. We've been covering these bills when they're in committee, so we have some idea of why they're important to our listeners, and we have some idea as to what the arguments are, but we know there's going to be a big floor debate, so one of us will go to that. Sometimes, some group, some interest group, special interest group will be holding a news conference. We demand that legislators pass a bill to cut the power of public employee unions. You remember that last year. Okay, who wouldn't? Groups, are always trying to seek our attention. I mean, it's kind of weird, a group says, hey, reporters, come to this room and listen to us gripe about something or advocate for something and put us on the radio. Okay, well, we may go, we may not. We may say, oh, we've covered that bill twice before. We just had that group on yesterday. There's nothing new here. Or we might say, oh, we haven't covered this. This is an important issue. Or we might say, look at the issue and say, this is such a mundane, minuscule issue. It's not really that newsworthy. We've got other more important things to cover. We're going to ignore that news conference. So we try to make some journalistic judgments about what's important. What impacts people? What impacts people in their wallet, at their school, at their job? Is this bill going to lower taxes, raise taxes, cut services, raise services? And those are the bills we think are real important. We try to concentrate on them. And then every once in a while, we'll get faxes or emails from groups. Oh, we're filing suit against this new program the governor has. We don't like it. And they may not be holding a news conference. Well, somebody doesn't need to hold a news conference for us to cover something. We'll call them up. We'll interview them. Well, why are you filing this lawsuit? And then, of course, we always say, well, what's the other side? And we seek that out and try to get somebody on the other side and give you the kind of package that you're used to hearing, at least two sides of a story, if not three or four.
Do you ever get the Watergate-style sources, the anonymous phone call, or somebody takes you aside in the hall and says, hey, this is something you really got to pay attention to, or is that just too romantic a conception?
Well, that happened in Watergate. It doesn't happen much at the Ohio State House. Or at least it doesn't happen to us very much. Now, 3 or 4 years ago, it may have happened a little bit to the Toledo Blade. They got into this story on CoinGate, you might remember. And they kept digging and digging and getting new layers off the onion and peeling it back. And they had a great story day after day after day. There might have been people meeting them in the parking garage, I don't know. But and that's, that really was a great example of reporters digging. We don't really have the staff to do a lot of investigative pieces. And that's why I say, the stuff we do is it's not romantic, it's not sexy. We think it's important, though, because these 132 state legislators, most of whom are unknown to the public, these folks impact our lives every day with their bills on taxes, abortion, the death penalty, school funding, college tuition, gas taxes, cigarette taxes, you name it, and they're impacting us. And so it's our job to cover them and tell you what these folks are doing. You can either cheer them or jeer them. That's what a democracy's about. But the better educated you are about what they're doing, the more ammunition you can have when you cheer or jeer them.
And so you pride yourself on being absolutely fair about this coverage, right? We shouldn't know whether Bill leans Democrat or Republican or where you are on a particular issues, right, from your stories?
Well, we hope you don't, at least by listening to the stories. I mean, and I like that. I mean, I like to do a story where, you hear both sides, and both sides really have a good person or two advocating their point of view. And, this word about objective, I don't know if anybody can be objective, because we all have been brought up certain ways. We all have our own biases. We reporters all have our political points of view. So I don't know if we can be objective, but one thing we can be is fair. Fair. That means you give everybody a shot at giving their point of view. And we want to do that because that's the only way the public can make a decision about whether the legislators are doing something good or bad. So, sometimes I get a little frustrated, people go, Bill, why did you put that guy on who said blah, 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 blah? I mean, that was the craziest argument I've ever heard, that didn't merit. Well, it's not for me to decide whether an argument is good or bad or whatever. It's an argument against the bill. We had 2 or 3 people for the bill. There were people who voted against it. You need to hear some of the people who voted against the bill. And I would think that everybody would want to hear points of view opposite to what they believe. I mean, you want to know your political enemy, don't you? How do you combat your political enemy if you don't know what they're saying? So I would think most people would want to hear both sides of the story. But I think today there's just a lot of people wanting to hear only their own point of view echoed back at them. So, like it's where you Rush Limbaugh and Air America and, whether liberal or conservative, a lot of people are surrounding themselves with just hearing their own point of view.
Well, how do you, supposing a legislator has proposed something or is about to do something that you find personally reprehensible, and you don't like what this person's doing, but you've got to be fair about it. And how do you work internally, psychologically? What do you do there? Don't you get angry about it? And this jerk is proposing something that...
I find I don't know if this... The more that I've been down there, the less I have my own point of view. I really don't have, I don't know, I'm just more interested in getting a good story than being outraged at what some legislator is doing. Really, it's true. Maybe 30 years ago, when I was young, I know who the good guys are and the bad guys are. The more you're down there, you see there are well-meaning people, conservative and liberal, there are lazy people on both sides, there are hardworking people, there are well-intentioned people on both sides. So I don't think I have much of a problem separating my own point of view, because I don't really focus on my own point of view. I just focus on on getting a good story.
Speaking of good people and lazy people, the Speaker of the Ohio House, Bill Batchelder, current Speaker, Republican, said
He's not lazy.
No, he's not lazy at all. Years ago said to me, I said, well, what do you think of your fellow legislators? This was maybe 20 years ago. And he said, well, maybe he thought a third of the legislators were very bright and well-informed, a third were so-so, sort of mediocre, and a third were really below par in terms of doing their job. Does that sound about right?
I'd say that's about right. I mean, the legislators are, I think, just pretty much a cross-section of the general public. You know, I don't, you know, are they the best and the brightest? I don't think so. I don't think the reporters are the best and the brightest either. I think just about every profession is a lot of it is a general cross-section. And the legislators, I don't think are any exceptions. You got farmers and small business people and lawyers and academics and I mean, everything in between. And so, and there are some of the folks down there, you know, we really love covering people who have a point of view. That's what makes a great story. What we can't figure out is why we got some of these guys down there, they just don't seem to have a point of view on anything. They're kind of mushy. They don't introduce any particular bills. They don't seem to have any passion for any issue. And so we kind of wonder, well, why are they there? But that's just another example, I'd say, of them being a general cross-section. You get some people who don't have that much passion for the issues that the legislators are discussing. But I think that's probably about right.
About right. Well, you say you don't have the best and the brightest, but some of them are the best and the brightest, right? A few anyway.
Oh, there's some really bright people there, yeah. And some of this has to do with, you know, having an institutional knowledge. I mean, well, there's some green people who come in all the time, of course, because of term limits. And some of them are the best and the brightest. But what's great is when you combine somebody who's been around a while, a legislator who's been around 10 or 20 years, and they are among the best and brightest, then they not only are the best and brightest, but they've got, you know, the historical institutional knowledge to say, hey, folks, remember we tried that 20 years ago. It didn't work. Do not bring it up again, okay? Some of the greener people may not get that.
But because of term limits now, you can't be around for 20 years in the legislature unless you flip, you know, from the House to the Senate and, in one case, back to the House again? Is that
But now we're getting a lot of those flippers. You know, a lot of people think that the term limit thing would make it so that nobody got more than 8 years of experience and then they'd get out. Because that is what it says. I mean, on its face, you only spend 8 years in the House or 8 years in the Senate, then you're gone. Yeah, you're gone from that chamber. But nothing says you can't be 8 years in the House, then run for the Senate, be there 8 years, then go back to the House for 8 years, then become state treasurer for 4 years, then go over to the Senate. I mean, you can keep moving around. And the architects of term limits, the people who put that proposal on the ballot and wanted people to vote for it, and people did, they put that in there on purpose because that softened some of the criticism that we would have no institutional knowledge at all. So we're starting to get people who've been around for 10, 15, 20 years. One guy recently, I think, flipped and flopped and flipped and flopped. I mean, Randy Gardner, I think he's been in for 30 years. So he's still around despite term limits. He's got institutional knowledge. And so we've got a mix of real green people who've just come in, been there 2 years or 4 years, and the veterans.
Is anybody saying, let's get rid of these term limits? This was a bad idea.
Yeah, some legislators are saying that. And kind of insiders, I'd say some academics are saying, oh yeah, we need to get rid of this. And they kind of try to get the reporters, reporters, what do you think? Term limits are bad, right? I don't know. I mean, we have lost institutional knowledge with term limits. So that's a negative. On the other hand, we have made sure we never have another Vern Rife as Speaker for 20 years. Now, if you're a Democrat, you might have liked Vern Rife. But he was a very strong arm. He ruled that place with an iron fist. He gathered all the campaign contributions to him. He would dole them out to other people if they weren't loyal to him, even if they were fellow Democrats. He wouldn't give them money for their re-election campaigns. They would lose their committee chairmanships if they didn't vote the way he wanted. So these term limits have made sure we will never have a Vern Rife again. You might be Speaker of the House for 2 years or 4 years, but you're never going to be Speaker for 20 like he was and mass that kind of power, strong-arm power. So at least some people would say, well, that's a good thing in term limits. Again, the lack of institutional knowledge, that's maybe one of the bad things. So yeah, you'll hear people propose, well, can we weaken term limits? Let's not make it getting out after 8 years, let's make it 12 years. And you may see that may wind up on the ballot in a year or two. There's some constitutional modernization commission that may come up with that, and they may put that on the ballot, and the voters might approve it, I don't know. But the polls I've seen show that it's the insiders who think term limits are so bad. If you ask the average citizen, do you think term limits are okay, or working okay? The polls have shown most people say, yeah, I don't see any big problem with it. There's one way you can get people, though, to really be against term limits, which I don't think is really very fair, and that is, I say to you, Fred, are you a conservative or liberal? And you say, well, I'm a conservative. I say, oh, Fred, you know what? If it hadn't been for term limits, the legislators would never have passed this liberal bill, and this liberal bill. And then you say, oh, well, then I'm against term limits. Or if you say, you're a conservative, I say the same thing, whatever it might be. Or you're a liberal, I say the same thing. But I don't think you can pin that on term limits. I mean, the legislature did become more Republican after term limits, but that wasn't because of term limits. It just happened that Republicans came into office and drew the legislative lines, and now they're in firm control. But I don't think you make the case that term limits made Ohio more conservative or more liberal. I think that's an unfair way to get people to be against term limits.
Speaking of change over the years, no more Vern Reifs, no more 20-year speakers of the House. A fellow journalist who covers the State House told me that he thought that the relationship between the two parties paralleled the relationship in the National Congress, that this was a change, that years ago, maybe in the Vern Reif era, they would clash heads and then go out and have a beer together. But that doesn't much happen anymore. That Republicans and Democrats are, to some degree, at each other's throats, paralleling the Congress nationally, that they don't really, maybe some of them even like each other very much. What's your take on that?
Well, that's a fair assessment that that's what's happened. They are less civil. They're more ideological. They impugn bad motives to each other. So I think that's happened. They don't have beers after the session. But I don't understand how that is because of term limits.
No, not connected with term limits, just changes over the years.
Just in general. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've seen that. Sure. Yeah. Ideologically, I mean, in the Vern Reif era, Vern Reif was not a super liberal. He was a moderate liberal to centrist, and a lot of the Republicans were not real far right. They were mushed into the center. So yes, ideologically they were more compatible, and they didn't impugn bad motives to each other. But now I think we've gotten a lot more. I mean, the Republicans have certainly moved, even in the last 4 years, have moved to the right in the Ohio House. They're more conservative than ever, and a lot of the Democrats are pretty liberal, and so you've got that clash.
Yeah, the districts in Ohio, the Supreme Court of Ohio just ratified the apportionment board's districting of the state, right? We have these gerrymandered districts around the state, which in most cases currently favor Republicans, and in some cases here favor Democrats. But when the voter goes out and they say, well, look, you got 65% of one party in such and such a district and 35% of the other party, the opposing party can't win. I mean, is this much of a democracy, and do you see any possibility of reforming this kind of apportionment of districts, this structuring of districts?
Well, there's one way we'll get reform, and that is if both Democrats and Republican legislators agree on a reform plan, and then they can, with a 3/5 vote in the House and Senate, they can put it on the ballot, and they can tell voters, hey, we don't disagree on this, we agree on this, so please vote for this. Over the decades, there have been many proposals put on the ballot by legislators in a bipartisan way, and most of them have passed because they aren't very controversial, because both parties say it's a good thing. But now comes the question, now how do we get Republicans and Democrats to agree on a new way to draw the districts? Well, the problem is the party in power always says, well, it may not be a perfect system, but it's a pretty good system. And, you've got a proposal to change it? Well, let's pick that apart, and they can give you 10 reasons why it's a crazy proposal to change things. And then when the sides flip, all of a sudden, the guys who were in power, who thought the current system worked well, now they're out of power, now they say it's a terrible system. And we saw that. I mean, both parties are guilty of this, gerrymandering. The Democrats controlled the process in the 70s and 80s. They drew seats to give themselves the advantage in winning the majority. And then in the 80s, 90s, 2000, the Republicans took over, and now they control the system. There was a point in 1981 where the League of Women Voters put a proposal to change things, and the Republicans were for the change. Why? Because the Democrats controlled the process. Now, in this last one, we saw the flip, right? So both parties argue, on principle, but I think it's pretty clear principle doesn't have much to do with it as far as the parties are concerned. Now, the League of Women Voters, okay, they've been consistent. They've said we need to change this system. It's unfair no matter whether Republicans or Democrats control it. But in terms of the parties being for or against change, that's just self-interest.
So it's not going to change. We're not going to have districts that make sense and that are fair and...
Well, unless some miracle hits and now, there was almost a point a couple years ago, John Husted, the Republican elections officer, actually, this may have been before he was Secretary of State, he was still a state senator. And even though his party was in control, or it looked like it was in control of drawing lines, he proposed a, quote, fairer system. And oh my goodness, some of his fellow Republicans said, don't do that, don't do that. And we were looking to see if, some of them might support it and the Democrats might support it. The Democrats, though, said, you know what, we think we might be able to win the 2010 elections for governor and secretary of state. That would put us in control of the line drawing. So let's not endorse this proposal to have a bipartisan thing. We think we can control the whole thing and get all the marbles. So there was a chance there where we might have had something, but again, I think it looked like partisan politics kind of took over, and we didn't get it. There may be, if there's some point at which both parties are unsure whether they'll control the next line drawing, maybe they would say, okay, let's end this craziness.
You wonder how it happened. I mean, in Iowa they did it. They have representational districts in Iowa, and I don't know all the facts of how that happened. Maybe it's just such a situation, right?
Yeah. It's so hard to explain to people too. I mean, when you see all that language on the ballot every time, most people, if you could sit them down and say, do you think it's fair that the majority party gets to control the line drawing and perpetuate their majority? I think most people would probably say no. But once you put any particular proposal to change it on the ballot and people look at it and their eyes glaze over, and we know when people are confused, they vote no.
Bill, let me ask you, you pointed out that at the State House News Bureau, you and Joe and Karen are not given the time to do what you call investigative reporting. I mean, you can't go off for a month or 2 months and investigate a certain situation and get the goods on malfeasance or misfeasance, right? But I guess some newspapers still do that, but my question is there enough investigative journalism going on that you would say that we, the public, know enough about what our legislators are doing, that we understand sufficiently, what they're doing in the public interest, what they're not doing in the public interest? Do we have enough solid investigative reporting? Is that in the universe at all?
Well, I guess I'd say we could, in a perfect universe, we'd have a lot more. We can never have enough good investigative journalism. But I'd also caution not to get too caught up in the investigative gotcha. Oh, we found one particular legislator who did something wrong. I think it'd be great to have more investigative reporting like that, but it would be great to have more regular reporting, day-to-day reporting, the kind we're doing in our bureau, about the goings-on of state government. Not to uncover some scandal, just to tell people what the heck is going on in the state legislature. See, our bureau, there's not that much cover. Now the newspapers do a heck of a good job. The newspapers, all the major metropolitan newspapers have bureaus at the state capitol. Now they've been cut back, some of them, but not all of them, and they do a great job. They recognize the importance of state government, how these people affect our lives. There's not much broadcast coverage day in and day out. Yeah. And I think, boy, it would be great to have more broadcast coverage. Because remember, our people, I think the polls show more people are watching TV, getting their news from TV than newspapers. Newspapers seem to be on the decline. TV. So if we could get more TV, radio coverage of the legislature, that would be great. I just as soon see more of that and not get too caught up in, some TV station or whatever, found some scandal somewhere. Because I think it's really what we have a shortage of is just good debate about public policy among the general public.
Bill, personal notes here. Why do you love what you do?
I love issues. I just love to hear both sides of an issue. I don't really like candidate stuff so much. You suck. No, you suck. I don't, or, he looked down during that debate and he looked at his watch, he's no good. I don't like that. I like talking about issues. Should we raise taxes on the rich? Should we cut services to save money for taxpayers? Should we ban abortion? Should we not? Should we have gay marriage? I love that. That's just, and it's what's really fun is sometimes, you predict, you cover it day in and day out. Oh, I can predict what they're going to say. I can predict. And then what's really fun is every once in a while somebody says something that's not exactly in their script. Or a third group comes in with a different point of view nobody had ever thought of. And you go, oh, that's really cool. But I love hearing a good debate over an issue. It's just, to get paid to do that, to collect it. Now, you may have to listen to a whole 2-hour debate before you get a good, 6 good sound bites that are really compelling to put into your 4-minute story that we put together. So sometimes you have to wade through a whole lot of junk before you get it. But it's still fun to listen to it. I guess that's when you say, I really get a thrill out of that. What's really frustrating is when we don't get, it's hard to find people to enunciate, to speak a point of view for this or that. We know there's 2 sides to the story, if not 3 or 4, and we got one side really good. Now we're searching for the other side, and we interview somebody, but they really weren't a very good interview. They didn't really say anything in a really good, down-to-earth, compelling way. They filled their answer with a whole bunch of bureaucratic gobbledygook about what the bill number was and when the bill was in the subcommittee. And, we don't want that. Tell us why it's a good bill. Tell us why it's a bad bill. And every once in a while, because these legislators and lobbyists are a cross-section of the public, some of these people communicate great and some of them don't. So sometimes that gets frustrating.
Take us back in your life, way back. How did you? I'm sure at 5 years old you did not say, "Gee, I'd like to be a news reporter," right? This developed over time. How did it happen?
I just kind of fell into reporting, really. I got a journalism degree from Northwestern in 1970, but my fellow students, they knew they wanted to be reporters, and so they worked at the Chicago Sun-Times on the weekends, or they interned at the local TV station, or they at least worked for WNUR, the student radio station, and then they had stuff on their resume that they'd actually done things. It wasn't just reading how to do journalism out of a book, and I didn't know that I wanted to do this, so I didn't do any of that stuff. So
you knew something, though, because you got the degree in journalism. You knew something at that point.
Well, I got the degree, but I didn't really have any experience in being a reporter. I said, well, here's how it works. Other than covering the Evanston, Illinois Police Department for 3 months, in 1969 or something, which was pretty hard for a slightly long-haired college student covering the police there. But anyway, no, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I came back to Columbus and just got a little part-time job at WOSU Radio, 4 hours a day.
Was that your first job after college?
Well, I was a janitor for 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
I was over here at Rinks Department. It was Rinks over on Livingston Avenue. Actually, I wasn't really working for Rinks. I was working for the ABC Cleaning Company, who hired me out to Rinks. So they didn't even took money off the top, and I was working there, and I showed up every day for 2 months. They couldn't believe that, to have somebody on the crew that was showing up every day. So when I said, "Hey, I've got a job. I've got to quit. I've got a job at WOSU Radio," they said, "That's great. I'll bet they need a good cleanup crew." Right? And I said, "Okay, fine." But I mean, my job at WSU was nothing special. It was just a little, somebody handed you the AP wire copy, they'd rip off and they'd hand it to you and you'd correct it and hand it to some guy read it on the air. That's pretty low level work. But I mean, I did that for four hours a day. And then after a couple months, they said, here, take this tape recorder. You're going to be working 6 hours a day. Take this tape recorder and go to City Hall and see what the mayor's doing. And I said, okay, I don't really know what the heck I'm doing, but I'll go there. And, I learned by doing pretty much. And did that for 3 or 4 or 5 years, covered general assignment things, City Hall, the school board, whatever. And then an opening opened up in the mid-'70s at the State House. So I said, well, let me try going down there and see what that's like. So.
Was it during that general assignment reporting for WOSU, that 4 or 5 years, was it at some point during that, did you say, aha, this is what I want to do, I want to report the news? Or was it later?
Yeah, no, I think, after I got into that a couple of years, it was great. NPR was just starting up in 1971, and I remember doing a few long pieces for them. Their quality standards were much lower than now, okay? They were, so, I mean, you look back on some of those, like if you read your high school poetry, you cringe. Well, if you look back at some of the stuff you did when you were started as a reporter, you go, oh. But anyway, I mean, I did a few things for them. That was pretty exciting. There was this new thing called NPR. Got a few pieces on there, and it was exhilarating. Exhilarating. Yeah.
Well, what was exhilarating about it?
Well, I mean, hearing both sides of an argument, gathering it, feeling like, the tension builds up during the day. Am I going to make the deadline? I got to get this story. But, you gather things and then mapping it out. I mean, I like to map out a story and say, okay, I've got the governor and I've got this other guy who says, yeah, that's a good bill. And now I've got this labor union saying that really is a terrible thing. And I've got this woman who was impacted by the bill, who had a terrible experience with this kind of thing years ago. I go, okay, great. Now, okay, so I'm going to write it. This is going to go first, and then this and that. I don't know. I like kind of packaging up, tidying up something, and saying, okay, that makes sense. That flows. Is this really clear here? I've got to explain that again. Most people aren't going to understand what I say there. It's just kind of fun when not every package, you're not happy with everything you do, but at the end, a lot of the stuff you do, you go, well, that's pretty good. That's, it's not the most exciting story in the world. We're talking about some fairly boring topic, but I've done my best. I explained how it impacts people, so there you go.
There's this interest in issues and hearing all sides and explaining them to others. Does that come from your family at all? I mean, did you have the kind of family that sat around the dinner table and discussed issues and argued and shaking your head no?
No, I have no idea where this came from. I really don't.
No example from your mom or dad or?
No, they did not talk politics. Now, I had an older brother who might have been a little interested in politics, but he was 10 years older, off in the Peace Corps in Africa, and I didn't really deal much with him as a child, so I don't know where. I don't really know where I got it from.
Yeah. You have another interest too, music. Everybody knows music. Bill, wonderful voice. The 60s, right? Where does that come from? Do you come from a musical family?
Well, not my mother and father, but my brother. I don't know. Maybe it's, maybe it skips a generation and my grandfather was a musician or something. I don't know. But my brother has a beautiful voice and was in the Columbus Boy Choir in 1950 and 51, and he would sing some, but I wasn't around him that much. I don't know. I don't know where that came from, but I like singing. I mean, especially if you're covering the State House and a bunch of politicians 8 hours a day, you need some release. Art, sports, I don't know what it might be, a good massage, something. You need something that's totally different. And so, music is one thing that I use.
Do you sometimes go home at night after a really frustrating day, pick up the guitar and
smash it against the
wall? Yeah.
No, I don't really, no. I don't, not that I can think of in reaction to the bad day. I do noodle around a little on the piano, yeah, I guess I do. But I don't think I do it consciously of, I've got to do this because I had such a bad day. I don't have that many bad days, really. I really don't.
You're pretty even-tempered, right?
I think
relaxed.
So, yeah. Now, if somebody said they didn't like a story, or, I don't know, you didn't treat me well or something, I get a little upset because I try to pride myself on being very fair. And every once in a while, somebody.
Does somebody come up to you and subject of a story and say, "Hey, you weren't fair to me the way you cut my interview"?
Not really legislator. Once in a while, a listener.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare. We don't get all that much feedback from listeners. I mean, but every once in a while, somebody will call up and, why didn't you mention that the governor did this and that and this and that? Well, I only have 4 minutes in my story, you know. I know if you don't like the governor, you'd like me to tell everybody all the bad things that you don't like, but I mean, I don't have room for everything. I did have somebody from the union saying they didn't like what Kasich did, and I had somebody else, a Democratic legislator, said they didn't. So I mean, okay, but I can't pile on. You know, everybody kind of wants their particular subjective view told, and we just can't do that.
There are some stories that I assume, some kinds of stories you like covering better than others. And one thing I've always noticed, that whenever there's a story involving capital punishment, you tend to do them. Am I right about that?
Well, I do some of them, some of the capital punishment stories. Yeah, not all. We kind of split it up depending on what's been going on. That's one of those issues that, you know, when I say, well, what's important news-wise, to me, the money issues are the number one. You know, is it going to put money in your pocket or take money out? Is it going to create jobs? Those are the big money issues. That's usually number one on our list. But second and third kind of are these issues that really are not so much about money, but they are about very emotional issues that everybody seems to have very committed views about. And they stir people, whether it be abortion or capital punishment, stem cell research, that kind of thing. And so we think those are important news stories too, because they're important public policy debates. So capital punishment is one of those. It's a fascinating issue. And
do you have
so
strong feelings one way or do you have strong feelings one way or another about capital punishment?
No, I mean, I think sometimes I say, 100 years from now, we won't be here, but other people will look back probably and say, my, how primitive. The Star Trek people, Shatner would look back and say, oh, I can't believe they actually put people to death. So I think that will probably be the case. But on the other hand, when you hear these cases that, and we cover the executions, and you hear the cases about the guy who, cut off the woman's hands and stabbed her 138 times, and you go, oh, this is terrible. And if you react from emotion, you're likely to say, some people deserve to die. So, I guess this is more of my thing. Well, I see this point of view, I see that point of view, and it kind of just depends on where I'm at the moment, how I come out.
What do you think is the most, I don't know if you think of it this way, one of the most memorable stories you've ever covered, or the most wonderful package you've ever put together? Is there anything you're especially proud of all the many, many thousands?
Well, I remember I put together like a 3-part series on Jim Rhodes before he died, but to be aired after he died. You do an obit piece. You can't wait till somebody dies and then go, oh no, where's our tape of this? And it'll take you a week to put together a good piece. So I remember I worked on that for days and days and days and days, looking back old tape, and I had just a great time coming up with all sorts of, funny things, interesting things, poignant things about Rhodes. Him mispronouncing Mitsubishi and calling it Mitsububi, and his we were not going to raise taxes in this state, and then pointing out, well, at one time the recession got so bad, he did push for us to raise taxes in this state. So there's the kind of piece I like to do, is when you can have some texture to them, and you can say, you can not only show somebody's personal side, but their public policy side. You can show what their thrust was, but then you can show how, well, sometimes they deviated from that and didn't always follow their principle. And, with a 3-part series, well, you could do that. We don't usually do 3-part series. We don't have the time. The topics don't necessarily merit a 3-part series all the time. So that's, that kind of thing. I think I did something similar with Vern Reif, and had great tape of him gaveling down people who wouldn't be quiet when he ordered their mic cut off and so forth. And, I think it came, you could stand back and say, well, that was a pretty good piece. That showed that he did some good things according to some people, but he also was a very strong-armed leader, and if you didn't obey him, you got cut off. And so I think can you sit back and go, well, I think that really was an accurate portrait. It gave people a flavor of what somebody was like or what an issue was like. That's when you feel good about it.
Over the years, politicians you particularly enjoyed covering because they were colorful. Rhodes might have been one of them, I would assume. Who did you particularly enjoy covering all those years?
Well, Dick Celeste was very good to cover because he communicated real well. You could stick a mic in front of him anytime and he'd say something that was usable on the air, and it was about a public policy issue, and it had a generally strong point of view. So he was always a pleasure to cover. A lot of these legislators who are either on the right or the left and who are good communicators, they are great to cover because they have strong points of view, and it helps spark a good public policy debate. Should we raise taxes? Should we lower taxes? Whatever it might be. So they're fun to cover. Democrat Bob Hagan is a good example. Democrat Turner from Cleveland. She's always she gets fired up and on the House and Senate floor and makes great comments. Some of the more conservative legislators are great. Tim Grendell, he's not there anymore. He was always a great interview. Bill Seitz. Kasich sometimes is good. So again, people with strong points of view it's when somebody takes kind of a middle position on something. I don't know, it's just not, they have to get it, sometimes they'll be in the story because we want to show, well, there are some moderates in there, but it doesn't help to spark the interesting debate,
How would you, if you can, sum up 40 years of Ohio politics? What kind of a government do we have? We always hear that the New York State Legislature is rated among the worst in the country, the New York Legislature. They don't get anything done. They have no power to do anything, or they choose not to exercise it. What would you say about the Ohio Legislature and the succession of governors we've had? We've heard accusations of pay to play. We've heard, on the other hand, we've had a government of integrity. Where would you put the Ohio State government over the years in comparison with others around the country?
Well, first of all, I'd call our legislature cautious, for the most part. Not always, but usually Ohio is not the first state in the country to pass something. Now, we almost were this past week when we had the heartbeat abortion bill, and it looked like maybe the Senate was going to go along with it. The House, but no, the Senate said, no, we're not going to do it. To me, that symbolized, even though we got on the verge of doing it, we didn't do it. Usually Ohio, you find, when we do the stories, we'll go, Ohio just banned texting while driving. We're the 38th state to do it. Okay. We're the 15th state, but almost never the 50th and almost never the first or second. We're always kind of in the middle there, we follow. One thing I'd characterize this is, the people in New York probably think that Ohio is always Republican and a bunch of cornfields and is in the middle of the country. And of course, if you look, no, we're almost on the East Coast. We are not a Republican state, as evidenced by the fact that Obama just won Ohio. Now, do the Republicans control the legislature? Yes, but one reason, as you point out, the Republicans drew the lines. The votes pretty much 50-50 on a lot of these elections. Statewide. So sometimes it's 52-48, but it's basically a purple state. So the people on the East and West Coast think Ohio is ultra-conservative. Well, we're not always. Now, the last several years, state government controlled by Republicans, true. But 1983, 84, Ohio was controlled by Democrats. The House was Democrat. The Senate was Democrat. The governor, the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, the Auditor, the Treasurer, the Ohio Supreme Court, U.S. Senator John Glenn was a Democrat, and Howard Metzenbaum, the most liberal senator. So there was a time just 30 years ago we were one of the most liberal states. So we keep going back and forth, and it's just hard to characterize Ohio. We're a real swing state. I mean, in terms of quality, when you say, well, some legislatures don't get a lot done. Well, be careful. If you criticize a legislature for not doing anything, the next year they may do a whole lot of bills that you hate, right? So is that any way to judge a legislature? Well, they didn't pass many bills. I don't think that's the way to judge. I think you can make your own judgment. Did you like the bills they passed? Okay. Or did they not act on bills you wanted? I get that. But, to judge them on, there was a year or two ago where they didn't pass many bills because, it's a terrible legislature, they didn't pass much. Well, let's look at the quality, not the quantity.
Quality indeed. If you have a question for Bill, here's the microphone. Please come to the microphone with a question, because then the people at home, we're recording for the Ohio channel and we're streaming live. Do come to the microphone to ask your question, because then people at home will be able to hear you. So step right up, don't hesitate, because we've got several minutes left here and time for a number of questions. And we have our first questioner coming to the microphone here. Yeah.
Bill, did you end up in public radio?
Speak right into the mic, go right up to it.
Did you end up in public radio by accident or by design? And if you didn't, what do you have a view, and what is your view of commercial programming, news programming?
Well, it was by accident that I got into public radio. I just happened to get that job at WOSU, and so then I've been in public radio and public TV for that time. I mean, I couldn't make it in commercial radio. Well, there's not much commercial radio reporting, okay? There's a little bit, but very few of the commercial stations have reporters, and the few that do tell the reporters, well, okay, you've got 30 seconds to tell the story. I mean, Joe Engel said maybe 30 seconds, that's our out cue, and our anchor introduction to our 4-minute pieces. That's 30 seconds. How are you going to tell that story, especially with both sides in it? I mean, you can't. I couldn't do it. I wouldn't. They wouldn't like me. It wouldn't be a good fit. There really isn't that much demand for the kind of reporting I want to do in commercial radio. So I'd be unemployed if I, tried. And no TV station's gonna. I don't know. I'm not like a TV anchor guy. So, that's out too. So, yeah, public radio. That's about the only place. It's by accident, but it's the only place for me. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Bill, now you may not have to deal with this at the state level, but if you did, how difficult would you find it to be fair in interviewing someone who is advocating the elimination of funding for public broadcasting, public radio?
I don't. Actually, we do that. I don't say we do that all the time. I've done that several times, not focusing on that issue, but for instance, every 2 years or 4 years, I usually wind up interviewing the libertarian candidate for governor or president. And, we know that if they had their way, well, they would, they're trying to cut government to the bone. They would say this is not the job of government to be putting money into broadcasting. I don't find it hard to interview them. I don't press them on that particular issue, because I just think that would just look kind of weird, me pressing them. Why do you want to cut public broadcasting? But I just press them on, aren't some government services necessary, and because they should be pressed on that. So, but I just chuckle to myself. This is so ironic. I'm about the only guy interviewing you, Mr. Presidential Candidate. Hardly anybody else is interested in interviewing you. I'm interviewing you. Being on public radio and TV is one of your few outlets to get your point of view heard, and you want to wipe us out. I don't say that, but I chuckle at the irony. I don't know if they see the irony or not, but whatever.
Okay. Step right up if you have more questions. And with Bill Cohen here for several more minutes. Yes.
Yeah, hi. First of all, I want to thank you for all the work you do and you've done, and it's always a joy to hear you. And, great pleasure. My question is that these days with I don't know, the web or digital media or whatever you call it, there's in many ways we seem to be sort of in a golden age, if not for radio journalism, but for sort of sound journalism. I'm thinking, things like This American Life and Radio Lab and all the programs coming out. And I'm wondering, first of all, your thoughts about that kind of longer form reporting, just generally on your views on that development, and whether you have ever considered that kind of reporting and what it might add to coverage. So, thanks.
Oh, I love, I don't get a chance to listen to it very often, like This American Life. I mean, that is so, the texture of those stories are so great. Of course, those are stories about humanity. The coverage we do is about public policy issues in general. You don't get a lot of emotion in our stories. Once in a while, you do get somebody in a story who's emotional, somebody impacted by a law or a problem or whatever. But we don't get that very often because we're covering just, the public policy issues. So I love that kind of, I don't really call it reporting so much. I love those kind of soundscapes, and NPR does a great job. Whether it's with This American Life or sometimes within All Things Considered, they do a whole 15-minute thing. And of course, they've taken days and days and weeks and put 2 or 3 reporters on it. We don't have the resources for that. But I mean, I love that kind of journalism. And I think, NPR, I mean, there wasn't that kind of journalism up until 10 or 15 years ago when Ira Glass kind of invented that. I remember he was just a regular reporter. In Chicago, he started reporting on gangs and schools and stuff, and it kind of evolved into this more conversational. I love the way he talks. He's not announcing, he's kind of talking to you, and I love that kind of delivery and that kind of journalism, and now you're seeing a whole lot of other versions of that. So I don't know if I'd be good at that or not. I don't know. I spent so much time just doing the straight public policy stuff. I don't know if I could learn to do that or not. It'd be interesting to try. But I do admire that a lot.
Yes, another question here at the mic.
Hi. I'm a social worker, and I just today attended a summit on infant mortality. And so I am emotional about this right now. And so I wondered if you thought WOSU would cover something about this, because Ohio is 11th in the country for infant mortality, and it's a terrible issue at this point, because especially for African American babies, in 2007 when they first started really focusing on this, there was like 14 African American deaths per 1,000, and now the newest ones that they just released for 2011, it's 15. So it's going the wrong direction. And so I had a great idea that my understanding is Ohio could be the second state to actually ban bumpers in cribs because of the dangers for infants in that, if we would all get behind that issue. But it's just, I wondered how you felt about this at this point, because it's something we really do need to look at.
Well, that's the perfect kind of thing, that if an interest group gets behind this, if all the children's hospitals and anti-poverty groups call a news conference tomorrow to unveil some new statistics, you'd probably get some reporters there. And then if that results in a legislator introducing a bill, and they give it hearings, and then they call in people to testify, and we hear some mothers of babies who've died, I'm just giving that as an example. That would draw attention. That's the kind of thing we would cover. And one thing we really love to do is cover a bill that impacts people, and then be able to be referred to real people, not legislators or lobbyists, what we call real people, the people impacted, who either come in to testify or you tell us about them and we go out and interview them, and we say, well, this is how the current problem impacts people. And you get some emotion, you get some passion, and it really helps when you mix those interviews with the legislators and the lobbyists, you get a really interesting story. So, but, again, somebody has to tell us about these issues. Somebody has to raise them, And so it takes social workers or activist groups, anti-poverty workers, business leaders, legislators, lobbyists to bring them out. So,
And this is how we get journalist attention. I mean, hold a press conference, have a study if possible, have a demonstration. There are ways of getting your attention, right?
yeah, and since we're covering state government, okay, you have a news conference, you have a demonstration, we might cover that. Now, if the bill, if nobody introduces a bill, well, that's, you know, it's your job to get legislators to move a bill. It's our job to report on what's happening.
You may get a call or a press release or something tomorrow morning is what I'm thinking. But but I wanted to say, too, I enjoyed singing along with Michael Row the Boat Ashore, too.
Oh, thank you very much.
At your recent
Thank you.
60s concert.
That was
Okay,
it, yeah.
thanks. We have another question in here. I think we do. Come into the microphone for Bill Cohen.
I hope I can get on the right subject, but I know we've talked about in the last 10 years or so, more common discussion is about gay marriages and capital punishment, things like this. But lately, and I do listen to NPR radio and WSU, the issue of legalizing marijuana. Now, I know it's coming up in Colorado, the last state. And I think it's worth talking about it because I'm definitely against that sort of thing, legalizing any kind of drug whatsoever. So what is your opinion as far as legalizing it?
Well, I'm not going to give you.
I know.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
well,
But
I
I'll
mean,
tell you-
just
but-
to say that, why should it be out there in the first place? As making it legal in some states already.
Well, again, see, again, it's not my job to tell you whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. But I mean, I'll tell you this, and we have covered this issue in the past here in Ohio, although really it's only been proposals to legalize medicinal marijuana. And I remember covering this 10 years ago. Somebody floated the proposal, and we interviewed some guy from Mansfield who had been sick, and I need this, so I smoke marijuana, and it's given me relief. And we did a story about that. We had people on saying it's a terrible idea. We don't need to legalize any kind of marijuana. We did a story or two on it. It was a very interesting story. There was a bill. The bill didn't go anywhere. Well, that's the end of the story. 2 or 4 years later, it surfaced again. I think we did another story on it. Different people. There might have been one hearing on the bill. We might have covered it. End of story. So, you know, we cover what's happening, and if things are happening, we'll cover them. I always try to make sure, you know, somebody once said it's the journalist's job to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. That's what one journalist once said. I don't subscribe to that. I think it's our job to report what's happening and let the chips fall where they may. It might afflict the comfortable. It might afflict the afflicted. I mean, I don't know. It might, but it's not my. It's our job to report what's happening. It's the citizens' job to react to that however they want. And if you want to afflict the comfortable, then you go ahead and do it. If you don't, you don't. So again, like I said, my point is kind of, it's not our job to crusade for or against marijuana legalization or anything. If it moves, we'll be covering it like a blanket, because what a very interesting issue. It's got all kinds of ramifications for crime, for health, for who knows what. And so it's a great issue. But I just can't see it moving very much in Ohio. I mean, the folks who wanted to have marijuana, medicinal marijuana, haven't yet gotten it together to get the petition signatures to put that idea on the ballot, let alone something that would just for recreational use. So there's another example where I think Ohio is not going to be a leader in any way, you know.
But
Yes.
one additional thing to that, they say Route 23 from Portsmouth all the way up, they say that's the avenue for drugs coming through the state. Now, certainly you reported on that, haven't you?
So the question is for people that haven't, is Route 23 the route for people bringing drugs through the state, and have you reported on that?
Well, we've reported a lot on the Attorney General going down and eradicating all the marijuana in Athens County in southern Ohio. And we've reported a lot on the recent move in the last year on the prescription drug abuse in southern Ohio. where some of the pharmacists, a small number of pharmacists and doctors have been writing all these prescriptions, and people from everywhere else in Ohio going down to Scioto County or whatever it is and getting this and coming back. So that's another way that area may be the middle of the drug problem. Yeah.
Yes, right up to the microphone. Yeah.
I have a totally different type of question. You had said earlier that you come into work and you decide what stories you're going to cover. Do you have someone dictating that to you, or the group of your reporters covering State House, do you make that determination among yourself? And if that's the case, that's fantastic. If you can do that, if you have that autonomy to do that.
Yeah, well, Karen Kassler is our bureau chief, and so she has the final say on what we cover. But in general, I think we just kind of agree among ourselves. You know, there's several issues. It kind of goes in waves, but you know, Joe Ingles, for instance, recently has been covering some of the abortion bills. So this heartbeat abortion bill. So if something's coming up on that, well, she's the best one to be covering it because she covered it last week and 3 weeks ago and 5 weeks ago. I could step in and cover it, but I don't know all the nuances recently, so it's better for her to cover it. So we know if that's happening, she's going to go cover it. Something else on the gambling casinos I've been covering the last couple of years. So today they announced they've got some cheaters at the Columbus Casino. Well, it makes sense for me to go cover that, so I go cover it.
So you guys have a lot of latitude in choosing how to divide up your stories and who's best to handle that.
Yeah, it's almost understood kind of. And once in a while there's a story that none of us have covered before. It's really complex. It's really kind of boring, but we know it needs to be covered. And that's the opposite. None of us want to cover it. You cover that. You go. That's kind of tough. But it is nice, though, to be able to make the decisions ourselves. Sometimes our member stations, our 34 public radio stations, call and say, are you covering this? Are you covering that? Or whatever. So we get a little bit of that. But one thing we don't get is, you know, some advertiser saying, no, don't you cover that issue. It makes my industry look bad. We don't get any of that. So we really relish the freedom to cover what we think is newsworthy.
We should say just a little bit about what the State House News Bureau is and who funds it, the structure of it, so people know. I had a hard time figuring out what that was years ago, and now I know, but maybe not everybody does.
Well, most of the funding for the State House News Bureau comes from the legislature. It's kind of weird. In general, you don't want reporters being paid by who they're covering. In general, I mean, in a theoretical textbook way, you say, well, that's not good. But that's how our bureau started. And we made it clear to them when we started our bureau in 1980, hey, we're not your PR people. You've got plenty of PR people. Oh, they got so many PR people over there. So we are real reporters. We're going to cover both sides of the story. Sometimes you'll look good, sometimes you'll look bad. And it's really worked out well. I mean, I don't know any time when I don't remember any time when a legislator has said, oh, I don't like the way you covered that story, you made us look bad, and when your budget comes up in the new 2-year budget, I'm going to vote against your part of the budget. Actually, I think a lot of legislators don't really realize we are in the state budget. I mean, really, I don't mean that derogatory, I just think there's so much to know. And then the others, I think, say, well, we know they're in the state budget, we think they do a good job, they're fair, and they're about the only ones covering us, broadcast-wise. And so I think they say they do a good job, let them do their work. We're not going to hassle them editorially. So that's where we get most of our money. I think that we do get a couple of grants from Porter Wright Arthur, one of the local law firms, and I think the OEA gives us a small grant. But really, I think most of this is from the legislature.
So you don't feel you have to pull punches on any stories?
No, I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, another question here.
Bill, you talked about how you've seen Ohio swing between one political party and the other in the course of your time reporting. Do you see Ohio as continuing to sort of move back and forth as the redistricting occurs, that it's going to always sort of be in the middle or moving from one pole to the other?
Well, I think the popular vote in Ohio can keep going back and forth, as it has, when you look at the presidential races. But now, once you get control of 2 out of the 3 governor, auditor, and secretary of state, and you get control of that when the year is coming up to a 0 year, then your party's going to control the line drawing, which will virtually ensure, not all the time, virtually ensure that you will control the Ohio House and Senate for the next 10 years. So unless, the Democrats win 2 out of the 3 of those positions in several years. The Republicans, I think, will continue to control state government, the Ohio House and Senate. There have been a couple times when one party has won control of a chamber, even though the other guys drew the lines. But it's very rare. I think it's only happened twice in 30 or 40 years that I remember. So if you draw the lines, you're going to be in control. So like I say, I think, at least for the next several years, we may have, virtually a split electorate, and we may have people voting in 2016 for president, and the Democrats could win that, but I still think the Republicans are still going to control the Ohio House and Senate because they have drawn the lines, and those lines are going to stay there until 2021, somewhere around there. And after they draw the lines and get control of the legislature, then the legislature draws the lines for Congress. So then this is one reason why we have Republicans controlling the congressional delegation, I think 12-4. So they control 75% of the seats, even though they really only got about 50% of the popular vote. But that just shows you the power of the line drawing process. And again, both sides have done this over the years.
Bill, final thoughts?
Just how grateful I am to be working for public radio and TV. Like I say, I don't know where else. I might be back at the ABC cleaning company over at the Rinks department store over here if it weren't. I mean, I really enjoy working for public radio and TV, and mainly because of people like you who listen and watch public radio and TV. I mean, I'm so proud to work for you. You are the consumers, and you care about what is going on in the world. You think that you have the power to change it. That's why you want to know what's going on, so you can write letters to your legislator, so you can sign petitions, so you can go to rallies, so you can carry a picket sign, so you can write emails, so you can maybe run for office or send money to somebody else who's running for office. There was a poll 25 years ago, I think it was to try to market public radio, and what they did, they asked people, you listen to public radio, and they asked them a bunch of questions. Then they asked a bunch of people who didn't listen to public radio a bunch of questions. Well, they found the people who listen to public radio read more books, watch more movies, give money to political candidates, get library books out, sign petitions, join protests, call their legislators. That's, we used to have an old-fashioned word for it. You don't hear it much anymore. That's called good citizenship. That's what a good citizen is. Well, that's who I see. The polls show that NPR listeners are more likely to do those things than average folks. And, I forgot one thing. And vote. Vote. You don't have to be dragged to register. You vote. Well, of course I'm going to vote, you say. Why should there be any question? Well, that's good citizenship, and that's why it's so cool to have our reports be aired so you can hear them and you can take whatever action you want. That's why I'm so proud to have worked for public radio and TV. It's been a pleasure.
Bill Cohen, thanks for coming. Thanks for 40 years of terrific journalism. Thanks for coming. Thank you for being here.